Most people think procrastination is a productivity problem. That's why the solutions usually sound the same. Use a planner, manage your time better, be more disciplined, stop being lazy. And yet millions of people know these solutions while continuing to procrastinate anyway, which creates a strange question. If procrastination is simply a lack of discipline, why do intelligent, ambitious, successful people struggle with it too? Why do students procrastinate on assignments they genuinely want to complete? Why do entrepreneurs delay launching businesses they've dreamed about for years? Why do creators postpone publishing work they're excited about? Why do people avoid goals that would improve their own lives? The answer is uncomfortable, because procrastination is rarely about the task itself, and it may have almost nothing to do with laziness. In fact, what you're about to learn might completely change how you see your own behavior, because the real reason you procrastinate begins long before you decide not to work. It begins with an emotion, and once you see it, procrastination starts making a lot more sense. Imagine this. You sit down to work on something important: a report, an essay, a business idea, a difficult conversation. You know it matters. You know it should be done. You may have been thinking about it for days. But instead of starting, you check your phone, then maybe a video, then a few messages. Then suddenly an hour has disappeared. The strange part is that you're not enjoying yourself. Part of your mind keeps reminding you that you should be working. So you feel guilty, yet you continue avoiding the task. This experience is so common that many people eventually conclude, "I must be lazy." But laziness doesn't really explain what's happening, because lazy people don't usually feel guilty about not working. They don't spend hours thinking about work they aren't doing. They don't feel frustrated by their own avoidance. Most procrastinators desperately want to make progress. That's exactly why procrastination feels so painful. The desire is there, the action isn't. And the gap between those two creates confusion. The mistake is that we focus on the visible behavior: not starting, not studying, not writing, not exercising, not applying, not creating. But psychologists have found that the important event happens before the avoidance. Something occurs between the task and the procrastination, and once you understand that hidden step, everything changes. Let's imagine you're about to begin an important project. Most people assume the process looks like this: task, decision, action, or in the case of procrastination, task, decision, avoidance. Simple, logical, straightforward. But real human behavior is rarely that simple. Between the task and your decision, another force appears: emotion. The project might trigger anxiety. The essay might trigger self-doubt. The presentation might trigger fear of judgment. The application might trigger fear of rejection. The goal might trigger uncertainty. The task itself isn't the problem. The emotional experience attached to the task is. This creates a different sequence: task, negative emotion, avoidance, relief. And that final step is the key: relief. Because the moment you decide not to start, something interesting happens. Your stress decreases. Your anxiety drops. The pressure disappears, at least temporarily. You feel better, not because the task is finished, but because you've escaped the uncomfortable emotion associated with it. And your brain notices. The brain is constantly learning. Whenever a behavior reduces discomfort, the brain becomes more likely to repeat it, which means procrastination isn't rewarded because you avoided work. It's rewarded because you escaped an unpleasant feeling. This is why procrastination can become a habit. Not a productivity habit, an emotional habit. A useful analogy is touching a hot stove. Touch the stove. Feel pain. Pull your hand away. The brain learns. Avoid that. Procrastination works in a surprisingly similar way, except the pain isn't physical, it's emotional. The task becomes psychologically associated with discomfort, so your brain learns to move away. The problem is that emotional pain is often invisible. You don't consciously think, "I'm avoiding this because I'm anxious." Instead, you experience a vague resistance, a feeling that now isn't the right time, a sudden urge to organize your desk, check your email, watch one more video, do literally anything else. The avoidance feels rational, but underneath that rationalization is emotional escape. And that's why procrastination often feels mysterious. The real cause is hidden beneath awareness. This also explains something many people misunderstand: why procrastination frequently affects the tasks that matter most. If procrastination were laziness, people would avoid everything equally. But that's not what happens. People often procrastinate most on the things they deeply care about: the dream project, the important exam, the career opportunity, the creative work, the life-changing goal. Why? Because importance creates emotional pressure, and emotional pressure creates discomfort. The higher the stakes, the stronger the emotions become, which makes avoidance more tempting. Ironically, caring deeply about success can increase procrastination, and nowhere is this more obvious than perfectionism. Perfectionism is often mistaken for a strength, and sometimes it is. But it also creates one of the most powerful forms of procrastination. Imagine a student assigned an essay. They want it to be excellent. They want to impress their professor. They want every sentence to be perfect. The problem is that perfection creates pressure, and pressure creates anxiety. Suddenly, starting becomes emotionally risky because the moment they begin writing, reality can no longer compete with imagination. The essay might not be brilliant. It might be average. It might reveal limitations. So instead of risking imperfection, they delay. Tomorrow feels safer. Next week feels safer. The unfinished project remains perfect inside their mind. This creates a strange paradox. The people who care most about producing great work are often the people who struggle most to begin, not because they don't care, because they care too much. The procrastination is protecting them from the emotional discomfort of imperfection. But perfectionism isn't the only hidden force at work. There's another psychological mechanism that makes procrastination surprisingly attractive. It's called identity protection. Most people think they're protecting their time when they procrastinate. Often they're protecting their self-esteem. Imagine applying for your dream job. If you apply and fail, the rejection hurts. But if you never apply, a comforting story remains available. I probably could have succeeded. The possibility survives. Your self-image survives. The same thing happens with businesses, creative projects, goals, relationships. Many people unconsciously choose uncertainty over evidence because uncertainty feels safer than discovering the truth. Not starting protects the ego. Trying creates vulnerability, and vulnerability is uncomfortable. This is why some of the most intelligent and ambitious people procrastinate. The issue isn't a lack of goals. It's the emotional cost attached to pursuing them. There's another force making the situation even harder. Your brain naturally prefers immediate rewards over future rewards. Psychologists call this temporal discounting. The name sounds complicated. The idea isn't. Future rewards feel less valuable than immediate rewards. Imagine two options: work for 2 hours today or receive entertainment immediately. One option provides benefits months from now: better grades, more money, improved health, career progress. The other provides pleasure right now. Your brain evolved in environments where immediate rewards often mattered more than distant outcomes, so the future struggles to compete with the present. This doesn't mean you're irrational. It means you're human. And when emotional discomfort combines with immediate temptation, procrastination becomes incredibly powerful. You're not fighting a lack of knowledge. You're fighting a system designed to prioritize relief. At this point, a different picture begins to emerge. Maybe procrastination isn't evidence that you're lazy. Maybe it's evidence that you're human. That doesn't mean procrastination is harmless. It can absolutely damage careers, relationships, opportunities, and goals. But understanding the cause changes how you respond, because if procrastination is an emotional regulation problem, attacking yourself becomes a very strange strategy. Imagine someone carrying a heavy backpack. Instead of helping them remove the weight, you repeatedly tell them to walk faster. That's how many people treat themselves. They assume the problem is character, so they respond with criticism, more pressure, more shame, more self-judgment. But shame rarely eliminates emotional avoidance. It often increases it. The emotion becomes heavier, and the desire to escape becomes stronger. This leads to the most important question in the entire video. Instead of asking, "Why am I so lazy?" try asking, "What emotion am I trying to avoid?" That single question changes everything because it shifts your attention from behavior to cause, from judgment to curiosity, from self-criticism to self-awareness. Maybe the emotion is fear. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe it's overwhelm. Maybe it's perfectionism. Maybe it's self-doubt. Whatever the answer is, you've moved closer to the real problem. And once the real problem becomes visible, it becomes possible to address. Not by forcing yourself to become a different person, but by understanding the psychological process that's already happening inside you. The next time you catch yourself procrastinating, remember this: the behavior you're seeing is only the surface. Underneath the delay is usually an emotion. Underneath the distraction is usually discomfort. Underneath the avoidance is usually an attempt to feel better. For years, many people interpret procrastination as proof that something is wrong with them. But what if procrastination isn't evidence of laziness? What if it's evidence of an emotional struggle that's gone unnoticed? Because the moment you stop asking, "How do I force myself to work?" and start asking, "What am I actually feeling right now?" you begin seeing procrastination differently. Not as a character flaw, not as a moral failure, but as a psychological signal. And understanding that signal may be the first step toward finally changing the behavior it creates.